Om Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. Om Apadamapahartaram Dataram Sarvasampadam Lokabhiramam Shri Ramam Bhuyo Bhuyo Namamyaham. Namaskar. Have you ever dived into the original Valmiki Ramayana, the epic poem that is the original source of all the 300 versions that have followed? It is packed with mind-blowing details about a super advanced ancient civilization. We are on a mission to bring this epic to life for scientists, students, and anyone else who is curious to know about our ancient past and our roots. We are reading through the Sanskrit version with English and Hindi translations, and let me tell you, it is a real eye-opener. The Valmiki Ramayana, because of its extensive descriptive content, serves as a starting point for research into our true antiquity. The Ramayana describes a highly advanced civilization, not just in technology, but also in social order and good governance. The proverbial Ram Rajya is described in great detail in the Valmiki Ramayana, something that every country aspires to for its governance and its rule. The story itself is incredible, but the details, those are the hidden gems. We are talking about advanced agriculture, incredible architecture that would make our modern builders blush, and a booming economy, and even advanced weaponry. And when was this? All tens of thousands of years ago. Here's the thing. Most people only know the Valmiki Ramayana through the movies and the TV shows, or a major part of the population has read the Ramcharitmanas that was written thousands years later in 1600s by Goswami Tulsidas. But the original version, the Valmiki Ramayana, written by Rishi Valmiki, was written in Sanskrit and paints a whole different picture than seen in the other versions of the Ramayana. In fact, it is like a treasure map leading to a lost world. So, with this reading, where we are reading every single verse or sloka of the 26,000 verses and slokas that were written in Sanskrit, followed by Hindi and English translations of each of those slokas. So, this project is about getting you, young scientists, scholars, and history buffs, and even the general public who will be listening to and exposed to this entire magnum opus for the first time, to dig into this epic poem. We are talking about a time period estimated around 12,000 BCE. That's mind-blowing, right? And we have a bunch of research projects that have appeared to us inspired by the Ramayana for your brilliant minds. And this research is certainly going to be myth-busting. So let's look at various topics and themes for research and further projects that any one of you can take up. Let's look at Mapmakers. Can you create maps charting the journeys of the Ramayana characters, pinpointing locations of key events? Here I would caution you not to go by what is available on Google or Wikipedia or current ideas of what these places were and what these routes were, because we are talking about 12,000 BCE. The political landscape and the geographies of that era are certainly very, very different from what you see today. So I would recommend that you look at antiquity maps of antiquity of the early times of the earth and the continents, going back to somewhere around that same period. In the Ramayana, there are detailed descriptions of journeys taken by Rama, different groups of people, and battles that are fought. various locations of hermitages which are famous, which have endured past many, many generations and millennia in incredible detail. So, could these be real locations waiting to be rediscovered and not what is being popularly touted or spread today in the context of today's geopolitics? Imagine geography buffs and historians and geographers, cartographers, and geologists coming together in a collaborative way to draw these maps. So, some of the maps are suggested here, trails and routes that are taken by different characters. Of particular interest is in the Ayodhya Kandam, after King Dashratha's death. Vashishta sends messengers to call back Bharata from his maternal grandfather, the Kaikeya kingdom. The messengers need to reach the Kaikeya kingdom as fast as possible, so they take a tough terrain, a short route using horses. But Bharata, when he returns, when they bring Bharata back, Bharata does not take that same route. He takes a different route because now he is traveling with a full retinue, carrying gifts, and comes through different towns and cities, crosses different rivers, and is on a completely different route. And this is certainly something that needs to be researched into and brought out. And then there is the interesting road that was constructed by Bharata from Ayodhya to the forest to bring back Rama. This road that he constructs is really fascinating, and we'll see about it when we talk about construction work. Because in the Ayodhya Kandam of the Ramayana, Valmiki has given a very detailed description of what took place in constructing this road and the pathway reaching the forest in search of Rama. Then let's look at the animal and plants. You could be a CSI agent trying to decipher the list of all the animals and plants mentioned in the Ramayana. And Valmiki has given very detailed descriptions of these animals and plants. In fact, in the chapter in the Balakandam, there is detailed information on how the giant armies of animals and monkeys was created for the future to help Rama when he goes to war with Ravana. And there were Vanaras, loosely referred to as monkeys, which I doubt that they were monkeys. Maybe they had different features, and some of these features one can see in the ancient native aboriginal tribes across continents. We need to look into this in greater detail, and I'm sure many mysteries will be unraveled. So here is an opportunity for zoologists, genetists, botanists to in fact collaborate with the geographers and cartographers and geologists in mapping the animals and plants, in describing their different habitats, the life cycles, and the genetic combinations that brought about a variety of beings. You know, different types of species were created through crossbreeding, which is clearly shown in chapters in the Ramayana. Then there is descriptive activities of Rama in the forest, which gives detailed accounts of each region, each season. And then there is details of domesticated cattle of very large numbers, because every time cattle were donated in lakhs and in tens of thousands. And then there was the army. So what was the economic size of this domestication? Then there is mention of various types of ogres and their genealogy and their characteristics and their behaviors and their physiologies. And these were different individuals that come from a different gene pool. Then there is the creation of the different gods, the Maruts, who come from the womb of Diti. It would be interesting to do a genealogy map of not only the sages and the hermits, but the entire Ikshvaku clan. Who were the wives? What were the races that were interbred? What were the communities? Which kingdoms did the women come from who married into the Ikshvaku clan? And then the life in the hermitage. What was the food that was eaten? What was cooked? And obviously, it had to do with the locally available fauna and flora of the region. And there is an interesting mystery in the Ramayana which mentions Guards wearing iguana skin armor. In fact, all the guards seem to be using protective arm braces on their hands to protect their palms and their hands and their wrists and their forearms, made of iguana skin. It's interesting to find out what made this material of the iguana skin so popular. I'm sure there was a scientific basis to why the iguana skin was chosen. And then, did they farm these giant lizards? Because the quantities that would be required for the large army and the number of guards stationed around the palace, as mentioned in the Ramayana, this would not do with a few wild iguanas being harvested for their skin. Obviously, the iguanas were cultivated and systematically their skin was harvested to create these armors. So, apparently, it was a major economic activity. This is an interesting topic of research. Then the economy of the times. Are you an economic sleuth? How did these ancient kingdoms function? Is it possible to decode the booming economy and the advanced industries that existed at that time? What were the economic drivers of that time? All this can be seen and deduced and inferred from the details given in the Valmiki Ramayana. What was sustaining this economy? This was known as the richest and most prosperous economy of the world. The riches that Dasharatha and the Ikshvaku clan had was unparalleled. So, what was the size and scope of animal husbandry? Because in every event that is mentioned, cows and cattle were donated, not in tens and hundreds, but in 10,000s or in lakhs. And with that kind of a population, that kind of an army, what was the agroeconomy? The sheer size of the army and the weaponry involved. I mean, imagine 10,000 chariots, 20,000 elephants, foot soldiers, archers. I mean, this was an era when archery was at its prime. The weapon of choice was the bow and arrow. And all of them excelled in using the bow and arrow in warfare and for all purposes. So there was advanced metallurgy, which meant mining and technology and machinery, foundries, and there was an industry that manufactured all these items, and they were made of metal. So, what were the individual industries and talents that were prolific and prevalent at that time to support this economy, to support this army, and to support that particular cultural lifestyle? And the advanced nature of the building and construction industry, highly skilled masons and artisans, architects, town planners. This is a thriving economy where of the building and construction industry. And when you read about the road that was built by Bharata leading from Ayodhya into the forest, it is mind-blowing the advance. They even talked about the use of cement. The word cement is used. And then Ayodhya is surrounded by the Saryu River. And as we know, down history, all great civilizations have thrived on river banks. So, what was the actual size of the Saryu River, and what was the river economy, and how did the Saryu River sustain this economy? That is a point of research. And then empires were built. There is repeated mention of seven-story buildings. How did they manage that? What was this lift system? I'm sure people didn't climb up 7 stories and 7 flights of steps. We have this arrogance in believing that whatever technology, advanced technology we see is only because we have created it. Let us not forget, as we go into the Ramayana, we will see more wondrous and wonderful and mind-blowing technologies emerge. In the Balakandam itself, the talk of the technologies is unbelievable. And in the detailed road building chapter 80 of the Ayodhya Kandam, where he gives the description of the road that was constructed and the campsites, how the camps for the army were constructed on their way to the jungle, the boats that were used to cross the river. So the town planning, how were architects and artisans of that time trained? How was the construction material sourced? And interestingly, such a complex and vast civilization would have a highly advanced drainage system, would have a highly advanced waste management system. Human nature will remain the same across millennia. It is inherent in human activity to generate waste. Human behavior does not lead to a sustainable circular economy where nothing is wasted, everything is consumed. Waste is created. Or even let us question, was waste created at all? Did they really have a sustainable circular economy at that time? Was what was produced by one industry used up and consumed by another industry? And the weapons. The Ramayana describes incredible weaponry. In fact, some of that weaponry is so futuristic that they haven't even been perceived as of date. We do have heat-seeking missiles, heat sensors, but they were using sound-seeking missiles. They were using hypersonic missiles. The weaponry described has not even been visualized in some cases. And this is a goldmine for researchers. We see Dasharatha talking about Shabdavedi Ban, which means it was an arrow that could be directed at a particular sound, source of sound. It was a technology and a skill. It was clear that they used cymatics and sound technology on a lot of their weapons. They even had odor-seeking missiles and weaponry. So, if you are interested in sound technology and advanced weaponry and also understanding ancient warfare of that times, here is a project for you to research. And what is the true age and antiquity of a culture? It is so important to establish an authentic and real timeline, because it is only through that authentic and real timeline will future generations appreciate the greatness and the value of any culture. Unfortunately, in the 500 years, a lot of the historical facts have been discredited, distorted, and rewritten. Now, Dasharatha was the 78th king, and it is said he lived for 13,000 years. Sri Rama was the 80th Ikshvaku king, because the 79th king, as per records, was Bharata, although Bharata did not rule, but Bharata was the man in charge. Rama, they say, ruled for 11,000 years. Now, how many years did the previous 78 Ikshvaku kings live? Leaving out Dasharatha, of course. If we add this all up and we go back to the advent of Vaivashva Manu, who is considered the first individual of the Ikshvaku kingdom, the Sun dynasty, whose son was Ikshvaku, from whose name the entire dynasty was known. If we go backwards and assuming each one of them lived a certain number of years, how old is our antiquity? Now, I would like to consider that the Ramayana was written during 12,209 BCE, and then use this to compare this timeline with the geological and geographical maps of the earth. And I am relying on Mr. Nilesh Oak's research, and I don't see any reason why I do not think his calculations are accurate. So if we need to look at if we look at the antiquity, the true age of what is India's culture, and we go back to the Gondwana times, and astrology and astronomy maps of events and people, and if you are interested in this subject, I would genuinely like you to reach out to Nilesh Oak and see how you can support him in his work and collaborate with him, because the depth and breadth and scope of the research that he has done in establishing this timeline is really incredible. Further research needs to be done to set an example, to give current governments and the current polity guidance on governance and administration. If there is one thing that stands out during the entire life of Sri Rama, is the quality of governance, the Ram Rajya. In the Balakandam, he very clearly outlines the quality of life, the quality of the people, the quality of the ministers, and how administration and justice system was carried out. In each of the books, there you will find that there is a chapter on administration, on the qualities of the king, and how prosperity of a kingdom and its people needs to be established. And there is the classic example of the entire city of Ayodhya falling into total disarray with Rama's exile, till Bharata comes back and takes charge, although assigning the powers to the wooden sandals of Rama, but he takes charge of the administration. And in the Ayodhya Kandam, chapter 67 are classic pointers for the need for a good ruler or the head of a country. I would encourage you to reach out to the Infinity Foundation of Rajiv Malhotra's, who has been doing a lot of work in our antiquity and governance systems. And if you're interested, collaborate with him and see how you can put your talents together to move forward in building more and more of the foundation on this research. In fact, in chapter 100 of the Ayodhya Kandam, there is a very clear outline of what governance is all about. In fact, when you read some of those chapters, I am sure, since this was written many, many years before Chanakya wrote the Arthashastra and the Kama Sutra, in fact, reading through those chapters, I felt I was actually reading parts of the Arthashastra and the Kama Sutra of Chanakya. So this seminal magnum opus is the foundation on which so many future theories and philosophies have emerged. So why is it so important to carry out Project Ramayana and research into the topics that seem to be emerging? You know, as we read each chapter and verse, and I am continuously amazed and filled with pride at the sheer scale and level of advanced development described there. It's a pity we have been, for hundreds of years, been portrayed as a third world, poor, developing country. Not true. Our civilizations were far, far more advanced than some of the advanced civilizations that you see today. And it is so essential that we graduate from just reading this as a book that needs to be read for religious purposes or for spiritual needs. The Rishi himself says that this is itihasa, iti ha asa, that is how it happened. And therefore, we need to work on the foundation premise that what is mentioned is a true record of the times and research it. Unfortunately, we have come to an intellectual arrogance where we believe that absence of proof is proof of absence. Not true. We're not looking in the right places, in the right way, for the right information to prove what is written in all our scriptures. And it is not just research with the Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana. We need to corroborate this and correlate it with the other scriptures where there are parallels mentioned repeatedly and bring it all together. It is a pity that research into our scriptures and our antiquity has unfortunately been relegated to the background, and B, sort of decided that only people who are Sanskrit scholars will do it. It is now time, and that is why we are doing this project, for the modern intellectual to take this up. And this is a very small endeavor on our part to bring you the original in Sanskrit with its translation in Hindi and English of each sloka for you to first get a feel of it. And I can tell you there are 7 books, 26,000 verses put into 645 chapters and organized into 7 books. And as we read each book, we find more and more content to deep dive into, more and more research topics and themes to work on. And why I would encourage you to start right from the book one and not wait for all the 7 books to be read, because then this would give you a framework, an outline, a roadmap, and allow you to choose a topic and decide how much in depth to go. Project Ramayana needs to be an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, interactive, cross sectional project. Research can no longer be done in silos of subjects, experts, and themes. We need to come together to carry forward this, to actually bring forward to future generations the truth and the real richness of this country's culture and antiquity. We have used the Gita Gorakhpur Press publication, the Sanskrit with the translation in English and Hindi, in this reading. We encourage you to acquire your copy from the Gita Gorakhpur Press. And I would like to put in a disclaimer. We are not sponsored by anybody, nor have we been asked by Gita Gorakhpur Press to make this mention. But since this is the source of our reading, and to make it convenient and easy for our viewers and listeners, we are sharing this information with you. So I thank you taking interest in this wonderful epic magnum opus written in 12,000 BC, the Valmiki Ramayana, the life of the times of Sri Rama. Thank you. Om Sri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Ramanama Varanane. Om Apadamapahartaram Dataram Sarvasampadam Lokabhiramam Shri Ramam Bhuyo Bhuyo Namamyaham. Dhanyavad.